Hello class, Daniel Lewis here, answering in response to the prompts that we have about our personality and our Big Five personality assessment and the self-confidence scores. So taking a look at both of these and what my personality profile has to say about myself. I believe that my personality promotes my self-confidence. One in the neuroticism, how that comes into play is I'm pretty even-keeled. I don't get too high or too low. So because of that, I'm able to have a self-confidence that I know that I'm going to be able to do the job. And when adversity happens, which is always going to happen, you're playing a sport, there's other people who are also trying to compete and do really well. When bad things happen, it doesn't get me down. So I'm not going to get too upset about things. I'm not going to lose my temper, lose my cool, or I'm not going to lose my focus based on what other external influences. So that helps me with my confidence because I'm able to see pretty consistent results. And the more consistent results that I see, the more self-confidence I'm going to build. So that's going to be something that really helps me as far as my personality traits. A personality trait that deters my self-confidence. One of the things that I'm really trying to work on with conscientiousness. I do things haphazardly. So sometimes, as far as confidence, I'll try things that I've never really done before. I'll do something that I've never practiced, and sometimes I'll try and pull it out because I want to, do something really big and spectacular that I'm not capable of. So that's something that I'll do. Or I won't practice. I'm not self-disciplined. I don't do things on time, or I don't do things the way they need to be done properly. So that's some of the things that can deter my self-confidence because it's something that I don't know extremely well. But I do want to, compete and do things at a high level. So having that doing things haphazardly, doing things with lack of discipline, that's something that deters my self-confidence. Looking at the third point, several reasons why an understanding of a participant or client personality would be useful to you as a sports science professional. Something that this is going to be huge to understand the personality. If I've got an athlete that's highly neurotic, that they're insecure, they worry about things, they're high strung, I'm not going to treat them the same as I would if they're someone that's even keeled, doesn't lose their temper, things like that. I'm going to treat them differently because I know that I can be harder on the player that has the mentality of the resiliency of not getting down or not worrying about things. So that's going to be one of the areas as far as an athlete goes. Another area when I look at agreeableness, I see someone that could be a little bit more like if they're a people pleaser, they're not very competitive, or they're just not out to get after it. I could see that as a personality trait where you might see opportunities for growth or ways to challenge. You know that you're going to need to breed that competitiveness in a different way if that's going to be the way that if that's how their brain works or if that's their personality type. So that would be one thing that I'd look at. When I look at some of the other ones, openness to experience and intellect, openness, some people are gonna be very narrow-minded. They don't want to grow. They don't want to change. Knowing that level in them is gonna help. So some people can be really set in their ways. I know how I'm gonna do it, and that's all they're gonna do. And then there's other athletes that are very open to new things. There's other fellow coaches that are open to new things. So that's going to be really important to understand in your athletes is to know how am I going to work around that? Do I need to be, uh, how am I going to approach them? If it's someone that's very averse to learning new things, then you're going to have to approach them differently than someone that, hey, you've got a new way to do something. They're going to hear it and they're going to embrace it and love it right away. So those are some of the things that are going to be important to understand. And then as we continue down, traits that are relatively stable characteristics that we possess, whereas states or circumstances can change moment to moment depending on circumstances. So what components of my personality are very stable? For me, definitely my agreeableness is something that's pretty much ingrained. My extroversion, those are things that are pretty much ingrained in my character. I'm very outgoing. I enjoy spending time with people, getting to know others. um, just building relationships. That's something that is definitely a part of my character, and that's been pretty consistent over the years. Agreeableness, definitely a positive person, good-natured, generally courteous and supportive of others. So that's something that is also a part of my character and my characteristics and my personality traits. And then lastly, the neuroticism. That's something that I'm not. I'm very even keeled, very even tempered. So that's been pretty consistent over the years for me as well. So those are a couple of them that I find that don't change. Now, components of my personalities that change according to circumstance. Two of them that really stand out are both the openness to experiences or intellect. That's going to be dependent upon what kind of people are influencing me. Is it someone that I respect? Is it someone I trust? Is it a coach? Is it a teammate? Is it a player? Where are they with regards to um, my level of respect for them? That's going to impact that's going to be a circumstance that impacts me. So that's going to be a trait impact that's not so much ingrained in my character, but that's more of a circumstance. Also, conscientiousness, discipline, things like that. The people that I'm around influence my discipline. If I'm around people that are encouraging me and helping me build more discipline, I'm going to grow in my discipline. So if my coaches are holding me accountable and if they're giving me high standards, then I'm going to step up to those standards because I'm competitive. I've had coaches that don't hold me to high standards and I don't do a great job because of that. So I think of those different things with regards to my personality and what I find to be different based on circumstances. And then a very popular verse in the Bible, Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Looking at that post and looking at that, what are your thoughts when you consider that God gives you the strength to do all things? I definitely, fully, wholeheartedly believe that relying on God, God is going to be, God gives us our talents and our abilities, and my role is to use those to the maximum ability. My role is to use them to glorify God. It's to use my abilities to lift him up and to help support others. So that's going to be something that I think is really important. This scripture I feel like is taken a little bit out of context. A lot of people love quoting this, but I feel like the scripture, if you look at what it's talking about, it's more about contentment and being content in all situations. So not having the earthly things that we desire, whether it be food, finances, all those different things. I feel like it's more taking contentment in God and in Christ rather than actually being that I can be strong and powerful and accomplish great things. I think that that's something that is important to understand and to not get too caught up in the idea that God's going to give me whatever I want. That's not what that scripture is all about. God's not going to make me the greatest quarterback of all time because I really want it and I believe that God's going to give me that strength. That's not what that scripture is, and that's definitely taking it out of context and putting it into our own lives and not necessarily reading to what the scripture means for our lives. So I think that that's something to understand and something that I've definitely believe in. As far as do I believe and do I agree that having confidence not in yourself will actually give you more freedom and peace? That's an interesting concept. I definitely think that uh, if I have a bigger focus and I'm not thinking about just myself, if I'm thinking about the greater good, if I'm thinking about my teammates, if I'm thinking about God and I'm thinking about how can I glorify God, if I'm thinking about using my talents to glorify God or using my talents to build up others or using my talents because that's what God gifted me with, then that's going to give me a different confidence. That's going to have me think of things totally differently. I'm not going to be consumed with judgment or what other people think. So those are just some of the things that come to mind. I'm sorry this might have been pretty long-winded. I know this seems like there's definitely a lot of questions and a lot of meat here, so definitely a lot to talk about. But look forward to hearing your responses and what you guys have to say.